So guys, of course the week that I go on holiday is the week when Bungie decides to start dropping more information about the Edge of Fate expansion in the form of other creators putting out videos of stuff that they played at Bungie early, but then also in the TWID as well. So today I've just got a video here covering everything that happened this week in terms of Destiny 2 news. Now, first off, I need to give a huge shout out to Datto for allowing me to use some of the footage inside of his preview videos in order to help me explain some of the stuff that's going on here. Huge shout out to him. I'll have links and stuff in the description to all the videos that I use. But to be honest, you've probably already watched his videos because they are just so good anyway, as well as all the other people who went and played early and made separate videos. But with all that said, let's just jump into some of the biggest changes coming with the Edge of Fate that got announced this week. First, let's go over the progression and leveling updates with Portal and all that stuff. So first thing you're going to notice is that the power level is getting smushed down to a more understandable number. I mainly think that this is happening so that new players aren't immediately confused, being like, oh my days, why am I starting this game at 1900 power or 2000 power? So everyone at the start of the Edge of Fate expansion is going to be set all the way back down to 10 power, and I believe that every activity currently in the game will also have their difficulty levels swapped around and messed with. So don't be thinking that in the Edge of Fate your power level is going to decrease, but in the difficulty level of activities is going to stay how it is. So don't be thinking that Vault of Glass is going to be at 1900 power level when you're set all the way back at 10. So with the power level going back down to 10, the new soft cap is going to be around 200 power, and you'll be able to get this just by doing anything in the game, mainly through the brand new Edge of Fate campaign, and probably by completing that campaign you'll be near enough around that 200 power level, especially if you do the legendary version, which should be giving you more loot as you go along. And of course, yes, the legendary version of the campaign is returning with the Edge of Fate, although it's not specifically called the legendary campaign. You just need to set the world tier of Kepler to the legendary version, and that's basically how that's working this time around. So in terms of power level stuff, obviously once you hit the soft cap, you're then going to be going into the power grind that we're used to with like pinnacle power levels and stuff. One major change is that power level is not tied to the artifact, so any of the bounties that you might be saving to get some of those artifact upgrades, they aren't going to be giving you any power levels with the XP that you're earning. All that stuff is just now tied to the mods and stuff tied to the artifact. So no more AFK farming XP to get free levels. All of your character levels and power levels are now directly tied to the gear and armor that you obtain, which is a very good change. Now, in terms of the portal, which is a big update here with the Edge of Fate, I originally thought that the portal itself was just going to be a new player friendly version of the directory tab, but it seems that the portal is now going to be just the main home, at the moment anyway, for everything to do with the Edge of Fate, be it the capture destination and all of this stuff. So in the portal here, you have screens of different activities like solo ops, fireteam ops, pinnacle ops. You'll also notice that specific activities have little gear icons next to them. So one will give you a guaranteed chest piece or weapon or helmet. This is a form of focus farming which hasn't been seen yet in Destiny 2, and I'm so happy that it is being added. So if you've played a Destiny expansion before, you've probably run into an issue where you're going through the power leveling system and you'll have one or two pieces of armor or weapons that are just lagging behind in terms of their overall power level. With this new system, you'll be able to see an item that is guaranteed to drop from a specific activity, and then just go and complete that activity and get that guaranteed item. This is going to make going through the power leveling process so much faster for people, because you're no longer going to be dragged down by individual items. If your class item, heavy weapon or chest piece are dragging you down, just go and find where you can get those items guaranteed, and you'll be able to blitz through the power leveling process. Alongside this, changing the difficulty of certain activities to make it harder will of course allow you to get additional loot and allow you to hit those target goals. So if you hit a C rating or a B rating, you might get more additional loot, which is definitely a thing to keep an eye out for. I believe that on the actual activity itself, it will say complete with a B rating to get X amount of additional loot, so definitely worth keeping an eye on that when you go into the Edge of Fate. Now, with power leveling and portal stuff basically explained, let's go over some new exotics real quick as well, because there are 2 new weapons and 3 new exotic armor pieces, 1 per class. Now, these aren't all of the exotics, I'm led to believe, so we'll probably see maybe more before the Edge of Fate releases, or maybe not, I have no idea, but let's just go over the ones that we know currently. First off, Graviton Spike. This is a brand new exotic hand cannon that is able to swap between both arc and stasis modes. The arc mode is a faster fire rate, whereas the stasis mode is a slower, hard-hitting version. So when you're in the arc mode, you're going to be getting kills and you'll actually be charging up the stasis version. You'll then be able to switch to that version, which will then allow your stasis shots to freeze and generate stasis crystals. Then by getting kills with the stasis version, you're going to be charging up the arc version, which will then allow you to summon these bolt charge-esque lightning bolts whilst doing damage. This hand cannon is all about swapping between the different modes, charging each up by using the different element. Overall, this thing does look very, very satisfying to use, and it is a craftable exotic hand cannon. So there's going to be additional perks and catalysts that we'll be able to get our hands on later. And I believe some of the perks that I mentioned this thing could get was like rapid hit and maybe elemental honing as well, which would be very good for this weapon. So definitely keep an eye out for any quests that drop that could grant you Graviton Spike. Next though, let's talk third iteration, which is apparently going to be the seasonal weapon for the Edge of Fate, so you'll immediately get it upon loading into the next expansion, which is very, very good. But this scout rifle basically can do everything. So when you're shooting the gun normally, the shots fired will be in a triangle-like spread, but if you aim down sights for a short amount of time, they'll actually tighten the spread into a more sniper rifle or scout rifle, just general singular projectile, and if you get headshot kills with that charged up shot, you'll go invisible, which is absolutely insane. But then also just damaging targets with these charged shots will also mark the target, allowing you to deal additional damage with follow-up charged shots, or just shots generally, I believe. So the idea here is you're going to be marking targets with the charged shot, and then dealing additional damage, and then going invisible when getting a headshot kill. And then it was also mentioned somewhere that the catalyst for this weapon will basically grant you demoralize on those charged up headshot kills as well. So you're going to be not only going invisible and marking targets to deal additional damage, but also spreading weakened to defeated targets with those charged up headshots. So this weapon overall to me just sounds so good, and I am super excited to start playing with this thing. One thing to note though is that it doesn't reload like a normal weapon. Instead it has like a heat meter almost. It still uses ammo like bullets, so the weapon doesn't overheat, but the reload animation is similar to that of like a Tex Mechanica Scout, but instead of the animation being loading every individual bullet, you have to let the vents of the weapon cool down a bit, which can take a little bit of time, so hopefully that changes when the actual expansion releases. Moving on to armor now, we have 3 exotic armor pieces. We have 2 solar gloves for Titan and Warlock, and then a strand chest piece for Hunter. So for the Titans, you guys are getting the ability with these gloves to recool your Titan throwing hammer, which is such a good ability and something that I've been asking for ages. With this, you'll need to first obtain the Forge Master buff though in order to gain this effect. And in order to gain Forge Master, you need to either pick up fire sprites or get rapid multi-kills with solar weapons. So very easily done. And once you are a Forge Master, you can throw your Flaming Hammer and recool it with ease. I think also when you recool it, it does a little explosion as well. So overall, very satisfying Titan exotic there for you guys. And I can already say that this is going to be my new main Titan exotic once I get my hands on it. Moving on to the Warlock exotic, this is a solar buddy focus exotic and basically just buffs it generally. The more distance the projectile itself from the solar buddy travels, the more damage it will deal, and at a certain distance it's actually going to split off into a load of smaller projectiles that not only scorch but also track targets as well. This thing is going to definitely be my main exotic. I love solar buddy, so finally having a getaway artists but for solar buddy is very good, and I'm so happy that it is finally here. Moving on to the Hunter exotic though, this is a strand exotic chest piece and is all around tangle generation and using your melee to generate tangles and then potentially generate more of those strand Beyblades if you have that aspect equipped. So the general idea here is that you generate a tangle and then throw your charged melee at the tangle, then if you catch the melee on a return, you'll just bring with it another tangle. So you're not only activating the original tangle with this charged melee, you're also just generating another tangle itself if you catch the melee spike itself. So overall, really satisfying from the gameplay here. We can see that that was like throwing these spikes at the tangles, then they're going into the Beyblades, then you get another tangle which you can then throw and generate another Beyblade, or you can grapple to the tangles as well to basically have infinite grapples with the amount of tangles you're going to be generating. Just seems like a whole load of fun and definitely a lot of synergies there with Strand Hunter and that Beyblade aspect. So those are all the exotics that we know about. Obviously I've said that there are potentially more coming with the expansion, but they haven't showed off those yet. But we can obviously speculate that there will of course be one raid exotic weapon as well that hasn't been shown off yet. Now let's go over armor and weapon tiers, because this has been a thing that people have been worrying about, myself included, a lot. And one thing that I immediately want to say here right now is that, in my opinion, after looking at the different videos and reading about all these different tier systems, Tier 5 weapons are mainly going to be about just flexing them to your friends. These aren't going to be game-breakingly broken. A Tier 5 weapon is no better than a Tier 4 or Tier 3 in my opinion, because a God Roll weapon nowadays is still going to be a God Roll weapon going into the Edge of Fate. Nothing's changing there. So if you have a Tier 1 weapon that has a God Roll, but have a Tier 5 weapon that has a terrible roll, the Tier 1 weapon is going to be much, much better. Now, whilst a Tier 5 weapon will come with additional enhancement perks and additional cosmetic options, that doesn't really matter if the perks on it are absolutely dog poo. So in my opinion, weapons being tier 5, not really something that I'm too worried about, and all my old weapons I'm still going to use into the Edge of Fate and use the new currency required to get them to above 200 power level, which we will discuss in a bit. But in terms of armor and that new system, I would definitely say keep all of your current armor, but then once you get to a certain point, you are going to be replacing it with the new stuff, because of course armor set bonuses are here, and this newer higher tier armor, once you get to tier 5, is going to have just much higher stat distributions, so your builds are just going to be a whole lot stronger with tier 5 armor. So to basically summarize, tier 5 armor, good, very much worth going for. Tier 5 weapons, still good, but not really that worth going for if you're really worried about it. Now, let's jump into the TWID here and just go over some armor stat changes that were also brought up, as well as talk about unstable cores, which is going to be a new currency needed to upgrade older gear past 200 power level. This stuff can be earned from dismantling higher level gear, but can also be seen within a new season pass like structure. This thing seems to be resetting on a daily basis, and it's kind of just like a seasonal hub almost. I think that's exactly what it's called actually. And so just by completing these challenges, you'll be getting XP towards the reward track. And as you can see, unstable cores is a reward. And once again, you need those new cores in order to get your older gear, once Edge of Fate launches, up to above 200 power, which is going to be very, very worth it. And one thing to note is that these unstable cores do reset and go away once a season ends, so keep that in mind. And now let's go over gear tiering, stat changes, how new stats are going to work, and all that. So mobility, resilience, recovery, strength, discipline, and intellect are now being changed. So mobility is now weapons, resilience is now health, recovery is now class, strength is melee, discipline is grenade, and intellect is super. To basically summarize, melee, grenade, and super are the exact same to what strength, discipline, and intellect were. Strength and discipline, literally the exact same. I believe super has some little bits of tweaking there compared to intellect, which we'll cover in a bit. But mobility, resilience, and recovery are now basically baked into your characters, and weapons, health, and class are basically replacing those older stats. So for those of you who are worrying about not having 100 resilience, you basically are, because that's now baked into your characters. You just aren't going to be able to see it in-game as an actual stat. So Bungie goes over what the stat differences are here. So for health, from here 1 to 100, grants 0 to 70 healing when picking up an orb of power, and also grants 0 to 10% flinch resistance. And then once the stat is at 100-200 range, shields start recharging 0 to 25% more quickly, and take 0 to 50% less time to fully recharge, and you get 0 to 20 additional shield capacity versus combatants. For melee, from 1 to 100, improves base cooldown of your melee ability, and improves the amount of energy gained from external sources and any melee regeneration speed scalers from other sources. And then from the 100 to 200 stat range for melee, you'll be getting a 0 to 30% increase to your melee ability damage. This includes unpowered melees, powered melees, and glaive melees. Grenades is the exact same as melee, but for grenade abilities obviously, and you're going to be gaining at the 100 to 200 range a 0 to 65% increase there to your grenade ability damage. Now for supers, from 1 to 100, improves super energy gained from damaging targets, and it does not change the base cooldown time of the super. Also improves the amount of super energy gained from external sources, and from the 100 to 200 range, you're going to be getting a 0 to potentially 45% increase there in your super ability damage. Then for class, 1 to 100, improves base cooldown of class ability, and then improves amount of class energy gained from external sources. And then from 100 to 200, grants a 0 to 40 HP overshield, 0 to 10 in PvP on casting class ability. Duration is determined by used ability, example, dodge and thruster, 5 seconds, barricade and riff, 10 seconds. And now finally, for weapons, 1 to 100 improves weapon reload and handling speeds, improves damage versus minor and major combatants, and 0 to 15 for primary and special, 0 to 10% for heavy weapons. And then from 100 to 200, grants a chance for ammo bricks produced to contain more ammo than normal, and also improves damage versus boss combatants and guardians. 0 to 15% for primary and special, and then 0 to 10% for heavy, but then bonus weapon damage versus players is only 0 to 6%. And then mobility is fixed to what 30 once was for Titans and Warlocks, and 40 for Hunters. Additionally, there's a new leg armor that adjusts this higher. Resilience is now fixed at what 100 once was, and recovery is now fixed at what 60 once was. Main things to know about exotics is that all your old exotics are basically going to be updated, but if you don't like the way they are updated, Ada 1 is going to have a new way for you to get different roles of your older exotic armor. She's going to give you basically these tokens which you can use for free to just get new exotics of ones you already own. But one thing to note is that these tickets from Ada's focusing will only be available during the Year of Prophecy. They have basically until Renegades ends to spend all these tokens and use all of them to get any exotic armor pieces that you may want. And then also to end off here, prismatic changes. They were making some aspects only give 1 fragment slot, but they're now changing that. So consecration and knockouts are going to now go from 3 to 2 slots. Hunter Stylish Executioner is going to remain at 2 slots, whilst Ascension and Winter's Shroud are going from 3 to 2, and Prismatic Warlock. Feed the Void remains at 2, but then Hellion and Bleak Watcher are going from 3 to 2. And that is everything. I'm very sorry if I waffled there for a bit, but there was a lot of information to go over, and I hope that I explained it to the best of my abilities here for you guys today. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel as always. Now that I'm back from the holiday, I'm going to be making more regular videos once stuff drops about the Edge of Fate. And I also just want to say at the end here, huge thank you to all the support on my Splitgate 2 video. Because they just dropped the Battle Royale, probably going to be making another video for tips and tricks on that. So stay tuned if you want to see that video later this week. But yeah, that's it from me today. So once again, hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next one.